So the Democrats are beginning impeachment hearings on President Trump. They're not calling it that, but that's what they're doing. For perspective here, it kind of gives you a sense that, one, the Democrats weren't actually impressed with Michael Cohen's testimony last week, and two, they're more and more concluding that they're not going to get what they hope to get from Bob Mueller's investigation. That's kind of where we are with the state of play here. Jerry Nadler, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, is saying that the Democrats need to build the basis for impeachment of the president, which is a pretty telling quote here. His actual quote is, "Before you impeach somebody, you have to persuade the American people that it ought to happen." That it ought to happen. That's a pretty telling statement from Nadler, because the Democrats expected that Bob Mueller's investigation would provide them the basis for impeachment, and they're all starting to walk it back. If you listen, more and more you're hearing the Democrats saying that Mueller's investigation, he's not going to be able to tell us everything. The investigation is going to be secret. We got to rely on the president's team to release it. The collusion's been proven. He doesn't need to prove anything else, or he's not going to prove it, or we always knew this was what Bob Mueller was going to give us. It's really an interesting walk back. It is the great walk back from Democrats on this as to what they were saying. Remember last year, this was the investigation that was going to bring down the presidency. Bob Mueller was going to provide them proof that the Russians stole the election. He was then going to just provide them proof that Trump colluded with the Russians, and now it's he may not tell us anything. And then, of course, there's the Michael Cohen situation. Let me play you some of this audio from the Sunday shows regarding Michael Cohen. People were not impressed. First, here's Chris Christie.
I don't believe he's credible. I believe he's credible only if he's corroborated. And unlike a lot of the people who talk about this stuff, Mika, as you know, I actually had to do it for 7 years. And I put a lot of people on the stand who were serial liars. But that's what you deal with when you're dealing in criminal cases. And so what you need to do is make sure you corroborate those people. So I think that Michael Cohen will only be an effective witness to the extent he's independently corroborated either by other testimony, meaning verbal testimony, or by documents, or both, because he's got an awful history. Now, that doesn't mean that everything he says is a lie, but what it does mean is that you have to corroborate him. And I think any prosecutor, and certainly someone as careful, as skilled, and as objective as Bob Mueller, would never use someone like Michael Cohen unless he could corroborate them. And I think in general the same thing about the folks at the Southern District.
And see, this is the problem here. Remember what all the spin was on Bob Mueller going back only 2 weeks ago. I mean, we don't have to go that far back. Democrats were saying that in the Manafort situation, in the Cohen situation, in the Roger Stone situation, that all of Bob Mueller's allegations have multiple corroborating witnesses. All of Bob Mueller's charges are not based on one person, but on 3, 4, 5 people. That Cohen himself, by himself, is unreliable. Cohen by himself could easily be dismissed as a liar. Same with Roger Stone. Roger Stone could be dismissed as a liar, or Jerome Corsi, whoever. But that there are multiple people who can paint the picture, multiple people filling in the blanks, multiple people backing each other up through separate independent investigations. So to have built that entire case and to have trotted out Michael Cohen last week, for Democrats to now be saying, hey, we got to do this ourselves, it's a pretty big indicator they're not going to get what they thought from the Bob Mueller investigation, that all of their hype about the Mueller investigation really doesn't live up to it. Now, one more clip. Sarah Fagan, she's a Republican right-of-center strategist, not a Trump fan, on with George Stephanopoulos over the weekend.
I think only the risk to the extent, to Matt's point, if there is some real there. And right now, we don't have evidence of collusion. Most Americans...
Well, we have Manafort's evidence of collusion.
Well, you have Manafort's crimes, but that doesn't necessarily extend to the president. And we'll see what the Mueller report says, but one would think after, a year plus 18 months, we would see something if it was directly connected to the president by this point. But I think, ultimately about Cohen, you can look around the investigation labyrinth between the Southern District and Mueller and the Congress. Of all the things the Trump White House needs to be concerned about, and there are some real concerns out there, the Cohen testimony wasn't one of them. He's just not a credible figure. And only base Democrats found him credible, and they would find him credible no matter what he said at this point if he was criticizing Donald Trump.
Exactly. And that's a problem for the Democrats now, which is why their impeachment hearing is beginning not as an impeachment hearing, but as an obstruction probe. Remember, at first they said that this was all about collusion. The collusion's not panning out, so they're moving the goalposts to obstruction. And they may actually have some theirs, but there's a problem with how they're going about it, and I don't say that as me. So David Axelrod, a very nice guy, by the way, even if I disagree with him politically, I know David and his wife. I don't know his wife well, but I've been to their home. A Democratic strategist, worked for Barack Obama. He was an old newspaper guy. Got tired of Chicago corruption, tried to find politicians who he could help break through the Chicago corruption, wound up with Barack Obama, went to the White House. David Axelrod was on social media earlier today pointing out that the way the Democrats are going about their instruction probe in the House Judiciary Committee is they've sent out requests for production of documents to 86 individuals. Now, the way this works, for those of you, most of you aren't lawyers, so let me explain discovery to you just real quick. Discovery used to be my favorite part of being a lawyer because I loved drafting discovery and had model discovery that just not only did it become the model discovery for my office, but other lawyers in town where I practice would steal from me in this because I loved doing it. It's part of being a transactional lawyer. I loved the transactional part of being a lawyer, did not like the courtroom. Well, discovery is when you try to obtain information from the other side. So you have what are called interrogatories, and those are questions you ask where you get information, and you have requests for production of documents. The request for production of documents are those items that you wish the opposing side to hand over to you for you to inspect to build your case, things you believe are necessary to your case.